Hello BookTube, my name's Andrew and I'm back with another video today, and today I'm making a where to start with Australian classics, and treat this as like a starter kit pretty much. We're going to be talking about a lot of non-fiction, poetry, novels, and yeah, we're going to see how we go today. So Australia is a very interesting country, and in terms of the way we're going to start with settlement, how we were settled. So we've always had Indigenous people in Australia, but we were colonised in 1788 because England wanted to move their criminals far away, very far away, and pretty much in 1778, 11 tiny ships over the course of 8 months, with 1,500 people and a 2 year food supply, traveled to a pretty unlivable country in certain places, and it was chaos pretty much. And I really thought of two books that really described that journey is The Fatal Shore by Robert Hughes. This is very much straight to the point. It talks about the brutality of the First Fleet, particularly the way the prisoners were treated, and once they arrived on country, the collisions between the Indigenous people and the Europeans. And I think this is a really good place to start because you get all like your main points set about the First Fleet and what happened there. And I think this is a really good place to start. It is a bit more like fact based, and I think if you don't like that, I have another really good book called 1788 by David Hill, and this is a more narrative non-fiction of the First Fleet and their journey, and this will be another really good place to start. So those are like early colonization days. Another main non-fiction area I like to talk about is Anzacs, the Gallipoli battles or battle, and pretty much during World War One, we were sent to Gallipoli with to fight Turkish people pretty much, and it was doomed from the start. And it's a lot to read about, especially in terms of just the death count and how they had to escape from Gallipoli, and it was a lot. So I picked two books again about that, and the first one I'm going to recommend is Gallipoli by Peter Hart. This is more narrative nonfiction, and it's very readable, and it has some photos in it too about Gallipoli, about the trenches, what they looks like. And I think if you want a narrative nonfiction, this would be a really good place to start for the Anzacs. And if you want more of, again, more of like an account based, bit more factual in its tone, I recommend Alan Moorehead's Gallipoli. And it's very slim, it's got lots of photos, and again, if you want to find, these are two starting places, but there are many books about the Anzacs, and also just the world wars in general, and how they shaped and changed our relationship with England as part of being United Nations, and how we wanted to be more independent, and how we eventually became more independent. So that's the non-fiction section. In terms of the main authors, I have a couple here, and we're going to start off with poetry and verse. And the first person we're going to be talking about is Banjo Paterson. Now, he is very famous here. He wrote a lot of famous short stories and poems, particularly The Man from Snowy River, which was made into a classic film here, and Waltzing Matilda, that's also him, a famous song by Slim Dusty, that's again from here. Those are the two places I'd recommend to start. With a lot of the collections I'm recommending, I just say get any you can find and read through it. I don't want to guide you through these books because, experience them yourself. And so what you'll find when you read a lot of Australian fiction, it kind of reminds me of the American Southern Gothics in terms of the bleakness and tone, kind of like a Flannery O'Connor, but without the religion aspect. Because Australia is very bush heavy. Like, in terms of its terrain, and people feel isolation too, and yeah, it's a bit bleak, but it can be fun, and there are some really enjoyable moments. A lot of, again, isolation, and I think Banjo is a really good place to start if you want the Australian poet. There is a lot more I'm going to recommend, but if you're going to do the one, he's the one. Another really famous one you'd probably know if you know anything about Australian books, Henry Lawson. He is probably our most famous short story writer. He wrote, I can't actually what he wrote, The Drover's Wife, which is about a wife whose husband has left and she's stuck with her kids and they're in the middle of the bush, and how a snake comes into their house and they have to protect themselves from, all the dangers that come with living in Australia. And again, amazing writer, and yeah, buy a collection and see if you like them or not. And we have some the big hitters in terms of like more nationally recognized novelists. First we have is probably the most famous is Patrick White. This is Voss. Again, this book Voss talks about a lot of the Australian nature, like just people traveling through Australia and the horrors that they find. And I've only read Voss by him, but I really would love to read more. And so whenever I'm secondhand shopping or online, I will pick him up more. But Patrick White is a very important author to Australia, and I really like him. And yeah, I want to keep reading more. Next, we have, this is from the early 1910s ish. I could be wrong. Could be like a decade later. We have My Brilliant Career by Miles Franklin. And she wrote this novel when she was 16. And I'm trying to think of how to describe it because it was so. What's the word I'm trying to think of? It was scandalous. It was very scandalous in the way it talks about small towns. And again, she was very young when she wrote this, but you really couldn't tell. Like, her writing is it's very nice to read. Her prose she isn't as lyrical as some other authors I'll be talking about today, but again, very short. Another like classic of our country. So we have that. Next one we have is Picnic at Hanging Rock. Very famous. And this is the closest I'd say we have to like a gothic novel, like a classic gothic novel in Australia. It is insane. I love the alternative ending, and I don't want to spoil it. Like, just have a look at it. And there was a famous movie of it. You'll be aware of it once it happens. And it's a good book to have in discussions because there is so many things implied and mentioned but not followed. It's very dreamy. And if you like that type of dreamy atmosphere, but did it happen, did it not happen, you will love Picnic at Hanging Rock. And so yeah, this is another one you could read. Next we have Oscar and Lucinda by Peter Carey. Carey is very famous. He wrote a history of the fiction account of the Ned Kelly gang, which is a famous outlaw in Australia. And I don't have a copy of that, and I haven't read it yet. But this is his book, Oscar and Lucinda, and it's about a couple that move here and they start gambling and they just travel around Australia. It's very much travelogues-ish, but they're very rememberable characters, and it's very fun to read. He has a lot of books, but yeah, this is really good. And next we're going to go into some poets, because Australia is very famous for its modern poets. I only own one, but she's amazing, and that's Judith Wright. Judith Wright is probably my favorite Australian writer. Her nature poems are so incredible, and probably just, if you're gonna find someone that summarizes Australia, it is Judith Wright. The animals she talks about are incredible. Black swans, the rainbow birds, the black cockatoos. Like, she writes all about all animals, and she's very lovely. And if you ever see her, again, pick up a collection, go for it. You really like her. And again, because we have so many authors, and this is just a starter kit, but I'd always recommend picking up an anthology because Oxford, I don't know if it's still in print, but Oxford done an anthology of Australian literature. And again, I always like to have one because you get to learn about new authors and writers, especially ones that again we don't have in print. And so whenever I see one of these, I always pick them up because you can always learn someone new. So that's my starter kit. In terms of a TBR, I do want to get to. I do want to do Peter Carey's Idle Whackers. I've heard. I actually don't know what it's about at all, but again, I do want to do this one, and probably the most best-selling book by an Australian is The Thornbirds. Again, made into a famous TV show. I don't know much about it. I know I can't really help you with this, but I would like to get to this one too. And again, I'd probably, out of the ones I've just recommended, I really would love to reread more Banjo Paterson because it's very fun. But yeah, I've left out a lot, but also this is a very good place to start. And yeah, if you have any favorite Australian books or anything you want to recommend, go ahead and leave it below. There are some books that you wouldn't realize are written by Australians. Books like The Book Thief or The Boy Swallows Universe, or authors like Christine Steed. Like, you wouldn't realize they're Australian, but again, check all of them out. They're really good. Just, yeah, do that. But yeah, thanks for watching. If you have any recommendations for other people or any other books you like to recommend from Australians, leave them below. Thanks, BookTube.